Okay, we're back. My name is Tom Childers. This is the Pioneer who's returned. And what we have here is Sacred Geometry, Part 5. We just left off with socio-political ideals, and now we're at ideologies, which is deserving of an upgrade from my plastic but classic hand axe to my World Axe Throwing Association hatchet. That's what we do. We do like axe throwing targets for a competition. I did a couple leagues, and mine's a little bit dirty. I throw it in the woods sometimes. But so what we're working on here is religious state, civil society, federation of sovereign states, anarchy, technocracy, and totalitarian dictatorship. And in between them, we have ideologies that come into play, that show up in the world a lot, in addition to the ideal socio-political ideals. And let's start right here with midway between the Federation of Sovereign States and anarchy or revolution is localism. And localism is it's also like independence. It's where you get like balkanization, and you got like the Basque region in Catalonia in Spain are often have problems with independence. Northern Ireland also does that. I think Alberta over in Canada is talking about localism and independence. Now, opposite of localism and independence is similar, but it's from another perspective. It's like nationalists and fascists. Now, the idea of fascist is kind of like loose, but if we're going to use it in this particular sense, what we'd want to do is we want to consider how it's in between like a religious state which is run on dogma and tradition, and totalitarian dictatorship, which is sort of similar, but it's like person based. Is that the power, the person that has the power makes the decisions, and it's like absolute power, where whatever it is that they decide, it's like it's the strongest will is the one that goes forward. So in between that is a nationalist. It only really works with nations that have a common culture, because otherwise different nations that are like built upon like ideals that are different than we're of this country, so we're special as a people. Like that's basically how nationalists and fascists end up working out. And that kind of like lines up with a lot of like Europe's fascism. Now, anarchy and revolution and technocracy. There's like a middle territory which is very popular right now. Is nihilism. It's where you know that there has to be a power structure and people have to be in charge of things, and they use technology and implement their policies. But there's a lot of revolution against all that is good, or what all that is declared good, in the dogma of a religious state, which is opposite of anarchy and revolution. And so, similarly, as a civil society is opposed by elites and technocracy, in the same way a religious state is opposed by anarchy. And so the midway point between anarchy and technocracy is nihilism. It's like got no values, and it's like a lot of people, it's like it's as if it's in between. It's like a post-apocalyptic technological like power structure, and we have people that fantasize about that. That's like a real thing. People want that. The opposite of nihilism is conservatives, traditional tradcons. And conservatives and tradcons are right in between a religious state and civil society. And it's the degree that people think that their beliefs are important, and they want not just their beliefs to be what they believe, but they want what they believe to also be what other people believe, and to affect what other people are able to do. Like making, it's different to argue for creation to be argued or taught in school than it is to argue that creationism be taught in all the schools to all the people, and that the town hall has nativity scenes for your religion, for about resurrection and all the rest. Now, between a religious state and a dictatorship, we have nationalists, fascists. Between totalitarian dictatorships and technocracy, that's the secular absolute power run by science and the elites, which is socialism and communism. And communism really is, like in the, I guess like 70s and 80s, we had like a lot of movies where the Soviets were like super smart, and they would have super high-tech technology, and they had scientists, and then, they had like their own Russian Soviets, but they also had German scientists, and just they were like really high-tech. They figured everything out. They used science to like make the best warriors, and they made the best like weapons. And the goal was, and they believed that what they could do is have a technocracy in one part, like as a bureaucracy, and with total control. And the control is totally determined. All the power is based on by the leaders, by the people that take control, and so it's like this amalgam of the two ideas. Like communism light is socialism. It's the path towards communism without totally upending everything. It's you don't get all the way that you would like. Socialism actually would be like less extreme. It would be closer towards some of these other things. But then I think the last one that would be left would be the good. The North Pole, or the ideal as far as what we're looking for, what we're aiming for. That's capitalism and liberty, and that's right in between. It's not the same thing as having a civil society, and it's not the same thing as having a federation of sovereign states. Although it's close. It's between them, The idea is that there ought to be a mixture between having a civil society where, what does a civil society even mean in this case? It means it's like there would be public institutions and private institutions, and the private institutions would be like social institutions. It's not even private. That's like the yes, private institutions, but also social and like cultural institutions would be responsible for doing a lot of the things that in a lot of these other facets or ideologies that the state would be considered responsible, or would take responsibility of it. Or down here, that the state would not be responsible, but there'd be no concern for like setting up institutions in any particular way. It would just be like it would just be like family based or whatever anybody would do. But to establish a civil society would have like it would have like church, and it would have charity, and it would have neighborhood communities and whatnot. But it wouldn't be so strict. It would be secular and like universal for the community and the culture, as opposed to the conservatives want their religion to be the only religion, or religion in general. But civil society would be open to having, like secular solutions, and courts that rule more broadly than any particular doctrine. And the idea of a federation of sovereign states takes the idea of civil society one step further, and it says, listen, we're going to have civil society, but our society is not going to be the same as yours. And we don't have an answer for that. We can't explain to you why we're going to do what we're going to do. We're just going to do it because, that's how we decided we want to be. And we don't really like how you want us to be. And we also think it'd be only fair if we don't tell you what you need to do, and you also don't get to tell us what we need to do. And so the idea is that with like liberty and capitalism, it's basically like the state has like a specific purpose that is real. There's a real purpose, and there's the state institutions ought to be designed to support the civil society, and yet be reformed anytime there's corruption, but also to allow for the existence of a federation of sovereign states, which is kind of it's like a decentralized federal government, which is partly what the United States actually was in the very beginning. For a long time, all the way up to the Civil War, it wasn't the United States, it was these United States. And unfortunately, though, these United States weren't stable enough to be able to prevent like disagreements and like dissolution of the people. And also, obviously there was like a big dispute about whether or not slavery was going to persist. What really brought about the debate with slavery was the Western territories. Everybody knew that we couldn't let slavery keep going any bigger, even though there was not much that could be done at the time about the states that were based completely on the economy of slaves. And so, as soon as we started getting new states, the balance of power was going to, it basically was going bad for the southern states. And so in territories like Kansas, they're both the slave states and the northern free states were sending warring tribes, or just like raiding parties, to ransack the opposition's camps. It was like bleeding Kansas. It was where the riots and the terrors started to, like, it was a prequel to the Civil War. And so one of the things that you're able to like notice is that the opposites are very opposite. And like communism and socialism does have an opposite, and the opposite is not nationalism and fascism or religious, like constrictions or rigidness. Those are like off the side. And if we want to say that communism is left, then we can say that yes, a despot is to the right. I mean, kind of. It's not really to the right. Or a nationalist fascist movement would be to the right. I mean, it's like, I don't even know anyone that wants a nationalist fascist movement. I don't even know if there's somebody that speaks, like, I don't think anybody would even agree that anyone even, we don't really have nationalist movements in our country. In Europe, they have nationalist movements. And there are almost nationalist movements, but we don't really have a nation of we don't have like an ancient heritage except for the ideals, which is completely all the way over here in this side of the right. But they're like trying to get us to they want to think that they're fighting a totalitarian dictator. Like, there's people that say Trump is Hitler. And it's just like weird because nobody said shit about Hitler. Hitler was not someone that you wanted anyone to like overhear that you said anything bad about him. Like, he hung like all the people that got like tried to the Project Valkyrie, like it didn't work and they all died. Like, it was not like a funny thing. People don't really play around with Hitler, but he also, the like idea of like a religious state, like I guess would be like Aryan Brotherhood. I mean, that's probably closest to see, the thing about white supremacists is that they don't actually have anything that they think is important except for the cultural heritage that is conservative, which is American conservative. The American conservative is a lot different than the nationalist people who are okay with strong governments that take abridge our rights for us, for the benefit of our nation, of our national identity, against the outsiders. Like the conservatives over here, the Tradcons, they it's not so much like the negative religious state, it's like the Christian, Judeo-Christian ethic that are like societies, the Western culture, the Western society's been based on, in combination with civil society and reform. Like Tradcons and conservatives aren't so serious about reforming civil society so that we have, they're not like that big on rebuilding the institutions like Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security. They're actually okay with how it had been recently, even though that there's people that wanted to restore the civil society and the private institutions and the cultural institutions, but conservatives sort of float along with what happens. So like as things change, no matter really how it matters, they just want to be like, let's just like leave enough alone. But that's kind of more like an instinct, and what ends up happening is that people, like, they're like, we see them right now. It's the neocons, the rhinos, Republican name only, they're also, they like become statists because they want to say that what we need to do is, they wish that they had a solid agreement, solid dogma to like return to, but they actually really don't. And so what they end up floating in this like dead zone where they want to return to something and preserve things, but they don't actually have a way to determine what it is they want to preserve or like return to. And so in that sense, they're similar to nihilists, in the sense that they really there's not any real thing that they want to do except that they do want to do it, where nihilists don't want to do it, and they agree in the same. They like agree in the same decision-making process, but they don't agree in whether or not it's yes or no. And nihilists don't want to do it at all, but they, that's just their opinion is no. And conservatives, they do. They want to like keep things going the way they're going because they like it, the way it is. And that's the traditional idea of conservative. And so there's a mix, there's a mix of knowing what it is that we want to do and doing it because that's why we want to do it. That's why of course, that's the reason, that's what we support and what we like. And also conservatives still respect like free market solutions and the idea of the family and like not just the family as a religious institution and marriage, but the family and the neighborhood and working together and having an American flag and the things that you would do, like police and fire departments and all that. But capitalists, free market capitalists do not share very much with conservatives, because conservatives and free market capitalists are as different as free market capitalists who want liberty and people that want independence. There's people that want independence, and the problem with independence to do what? And people don't really figure that out. It's like, so we want to have the right to be able to be in charge of our own things, except you can't. It never really works like that, because you gotta like break down. Like a small tyrant is still a tyrant. I mean, it just feels better because you can run around with the same flag. It's you can have your own post office with your own language on it, and you can have like your own dialect. That's basically like a balkanization process, and so there's that never stops. And if you keep going that direction, you get like revolution all the time, and it's anarchy. And but if it does stop, then what you do is you go in the other direction from Yugoslavia, I believe, broke into like four countries. It was like Macedonia and I don't remember, Slovakia. I don't know, two more. Well, maybe just like Czechoslovakia would be the best one. It's like the Czech Republic and Slovakia. They went from a federation of sovereign states. They went from. They ended up dissolving by trying to get independence from each other, but they could. Well, then they ended up creating a federation of sovereign states as they joined the EU. But unfortunately, though, they it's like the capitalism in the EU it's not really gonna. It's not. They didn't end up creating more liberty, even though that was the direction that they were going. If I were to close this idea, there's a the like layout in a circle, and like the neighbors and the opposition, like the diagonals. I think that there are there's like a lot of potential ways to be able to look at and understand the different ideologies and ideals. But I think that what may be the case is that there may be places, not on the extreme, but like in some, where it's more it's better able to understand that like a portion in the middle, where it's like some of this and some of that, would be like where you end up putting actual states. But as it like turns out, like no actual state can be any of these things. These are like they're ideologies that like we have in a circle, or even like a political debate. We have different people that move all around, and each person is like wants to do different things. But like across the spectrum of people on the internet and people out in the real world, we don't really have a very good way of understanding like politics and socio-political ideologies, and we need something more complex. And I think that this is plenty complex. And some of the things that it does is it has, north-south and east-west. It has opposites of different spectrums, and they combine. And as we go around in a circle, there's like a lot of similarities in similar ways from at each point to the next. And I wanted to like share this with as many people as would be interested, because I can't finish figuring out what it is I want to figure out without other people helping. And I just wanted to like say, here it is. Signing out.